George Orwell didn't write 1984 as a distant dystopia. He wrote it as a warning not just about authoritarian regimes, but about how control seeps into everyday life, through language, through fear, and most dangerously, through the silent compliance of good people. Because the truth is, tyranny doesn't arrive with a bang. It doesn't come marching through the streets announcing itself as evil. It seeps in slowly, masked as safety, order, and even morality. And by the time people realize what's happened, they're already trapped. So today, we're not just looking at 1984 as a novel. We're looking at Orwell's warning to all of us. One of Orwell's most chilling insights was that oppressive systems don't just survive through violence. They survive through the cooperation of ordinary people. In 1984, Big Brother's rule isn't enforced only by the party's enforcers. It's enforced by citizens themselves. Neighbors report neighbors. Children betray their own parents. People willingly erase history, rewriting reality as they're told. And they do it not because they're evil, but because they believe they're doing the right thing. This is how control works. It doesn't force obedience. It makes obedience feel necessary, even virtuous. Orwell understood that most people won't resist a system they believe is protecting them. The greatest trick of power is making people police themselves. And this isn't just fiction. Historically, some of the most oppressive regimes thrived not because of their strength, but because good people were too afraid, too comfortable, or too trusting to push back. In Stalin's Soviet Union, millions were executed or sent to gulags, not just by government orders, but because friends and family members turned each other in, fearing that if they didn't, they might be next. In Nazi Germany, many weren't active supporters of the regime, but they complied, they followed orders, they stayed silent. Even in more subtle ways, governments have controlled populations by making certain ideas unspeakable, by shifting language so that questioning authority is seen as dangerous or immoral. And Orwell saw it coming. Orwell understood that power isn't just about laws and surveillance. It's about controlling thought itself. And the best way to do that is to control language. In 1984, the party creates Newspeak, a stripped-down version of English designed to make rebellious thoughts impossible. Words like freedom or truth are either redefined or erased entirely. If you can't think it, you can't fight it. And in many ways, we see this today. Language is constantly shifting, not always for sinister reasons, but sometimes in ways that make dissent harder. Words are redefined, ideas are relabeled, and questioning certain narratives makes you an enemy overnight. Orwell warned that when speech becomes dangerous, thought becomes impossible. Because if every disagreement is labeled as a crime, people stop speaking, and when people stop speaking, they stop thinking. Another tool of control in 1984 is the rewriting of history. Winston, the main character, works at the Ministry of Truth, where his job is to alter historical records to fit the party's current narrative. If something contradicts today's truth, it is erased. The past was erased, the erasure was forgotten, and the lie became the truth. Orwell understood that whoever controls the past controls the future, and whoever controls the future controls the present. Even today, history is constantly reframed. Some events are amplified, others are quietly rewritten or forgotten. This isn't always a grand conspiracy. Sometimes it's just a slow evolution of what's deemed acceptable to remember. But when history becomes a tool of control rather than a search for truth, society loses its grip on reality. And when reality becomes unstable, people become easier to manipulate. Another terrifying aspect of Orwell's world is constant surveillance. In 1984, telescreens watch people in their homes. The party sees and hears everything. There is no such thing as privacy. And yet the brilliance of Orwell's vision isn't just that people are watched, it's that they never know when they're being watched. In today's world, we might not live under Big Brother, but we live in an era where surveillance is more advanced than Orwell could have imagined. Cameras are everywhere. Online activity is tracked. Algorithms decide what we see, what we think, and even what we feel. And just like in 1984, it doesn't always feel like oppression. It feels like convenience. People willingly give up privacy in exchange for security, entertainment, and connection. But Orwell's warning remains. When you don't control your own information, someone else does. Orwell didn't write 1984 as a prediction. He wrote it as a warning that control doesn't always come through force. Sometimes it comes through language, through history, through the slow, careful shaping of what people are allowed to think. And most importantly, it comes with the help of good people. The greatest danger isn't just an oppressive system, it's that ordinary people, believing they're on the right side, become the enforcers of their own oppression. In 1984, Orwell showed that the most terrifying form of control isn't physical, it's psychological. It's not just about what you can do, but about what you can think. And the scariest part, most people don't even realize it's happening to them. The party in 1984 didn't just cross dissent, it shaped reality itself. It rewrote history, manipulated emotions, and controlled what people believed to be true. And it did this not through force alone, but through fear, repetition, and confusion. This is Orwell's greatest warning, that truth itself can be rewritten, not with bullets, but with words, not with war, but with propaganda, and not with oppression, but with the silent cooperation of good people who don't realize they're part of the system. Because when lies become normal, when questioning authority becomes dangerous, and when people accept their own subjugation as necessary, freedom doesn't need to be taken, it is given away. And that's exactly what's happening today. We don't live in Orwell's world, we live in one disturbingly close to it. The mechanisms of control he described may not be as obvious as Big Brother's telescreens or the thought police, but they exist, and they're more sophisticated than ever. Propaganda is everywhere. We are bombarded with messaging designed to shape our emotions, not our reason. Social media algorithms amplify outrage, news cycles push narratives, and facts are buried under emotional appeals. Language is being reshaped. Certain ideas become unspeakable. Words are redefined. Discussion is shut down not with reasoned argument, but with labels and fear. History is rewritten in real time. Orwell warned that controlling the past means controlling the future. Today, historical events are reframed, some emphasized, others erased, all depending on the needs of the present narrative. Surveillance is voluntary. We don't need telescreens in our homes. We carry tracking devices in our pockets. Every search, every click, every conversation is monitored, logged, and analyzed. Not just by governments, but by corporations. And the worst part, most people don't care. Orwell understood something most people don't. Tyranny doesn't require force, it requires consent. In 1984, people don't just obey Big Brother because they fear punishment. They obey because they have been broken. They have been convinced that resistance is futile, that the truth is whatever the party says it is, and that to even question reality is madness. Doublethink forces people to hold contradictory beliefs without questioning them. Crime Stop trains people to instinctively suppress rebellious thoughts. Thought crime makes even thinking against the system a punishable offense. And this isn't just fiction. Today people silence themselves out of fear of social consequences. They internalize propaganda without realizing it. They believe what they're told, not because they've reasoned through it, but because doubting it is too costly. The most effective control isn't forced, it's chosen. In the final moments of 1984, Winston doesn't just obey Big Brother, he loves him. This is the endgame of control systems. Not just compliance, but devotion. A world where people don't just accept surveillance, but defend it. Where people don't just tolerate lies, but celebrate them. Where people police each other's thoughts, not because they have to, but because they believe it's right. This is how oppression sustains itself. It doesn't need to be imposed when people willingly enforce it themselves. Orwell didn't write 1984 to make people despair. He wrote it to wake them up. To show that the only way to resist control is to think for yourself, to question what you're told. To remember that truth is not what is most repeated, but what is real. To refuse to let fear dictate your beliefs. Orwell's warning wasn't just about governments or technology. It was about human nature, because the battle for freedom isn't fought in the streets, it's fought in the mind. And if we lose that battle, we won't need Big Brother to rule over us, we will rule over ourselves.